Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Cumberland Local Planning Panel for the 12th of September 2018. I'll start by introducing the members of today's panel. My name is Paul Steen. I'm the on my left is Mr. Chris Young, expert member. My immediate right is Mr. David Ryan, expert member. Far right is Mr. Call upon the members of the panel to disclose any conflict of interest item on the no conflicts to be noted. Thank you. I should advise the members of the public that are present that this council meeting is recorded and live streamed and on the council's website, and I know I don't need to remind members of the public to be respectful in where they are able to keep to the time limits. If anybody needs another minute to finish off their submission, they should ask for it and I probably will grant it. We start by confirming the minutes of the past two meetings. The first meeting of the Cumberland Local Planning Panel of the 8th of August 2018. We move that be received as a true and correct record of the proceedings. I was present, so I can second it. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Then there was a meeting of the panel on the 22nd of August 2018. Would somebody care to move that be received as a true and correct record of the... All right, I'll move it and Simpson second it. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. We can move on to the agenda items, and first item on the agenda is 529 Hall Street, Auburn, and I think Mr. Brad Delapierre is registered to speak. Is there anybody in the public gallery who also wishes to speak but who has not registered? All right, well, Mr. Delapierre, if you come forward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you're aware, I represent the applicant for this proposal. The application seeks approval for construction of a 5-storey residential apartment building that runs between Hall Street and Bardo Lane. It seeks approval, as I said, for 41 apartments. 18 of those apartments are proposed to be affordable rental units under the Affordable Rental Housing SEP. We concur with the officer's recommendation. As from a planning perspective, the main, potential issue with this application is the height non-compliance. The site is located within an 18-metre height zone, and this application before you seeks approval for a 20-metre height limit. We note that the predominant reasons for this variation is that to accommodate some common open space on the roof and also to appropriately accommodate the additional floor space that's provided by the Affordable Rental Housing SEP to accommodate the 18 units. I also note that the height variation only relates to the rooftop common open space in the lift overrun, and having regards to the context of Hall Street, we do believe it's an appropriate response to the context. So that's all I briefly wish to say, but I'm certainly here with the architect and we're both happy to answer any questions.
The architect is present.
The architect is present, so we're both happy to answer any questions the panel members may have. So.
Right, thank you very much. Any questions of either Mr. Delapierre or the architect?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming along too. So at the conclusion of the public meeting, we will consider this application and notify our decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. So that brings us to the second item on the agenda, which is 101 Great Western Highway, Greystanes. There are two speakers registered to speak, Mr. Benjamin Uni and Mr. Rod Linnett. Before I hear them, is there anybody else in the public gallery who would wish to seek to speak? There is no registration, but I'm willing to hear people from the floor. It may not have made my list. What is your name, sir? Sorry? Dan. And did you wish to speak against the proposal or for it?
Yeah, I'm the objector.
Okay, well, will you come forward, please? Would you come forward to the lectern?
Now or should I speak?
Oh, if you come forward to the lectern, it can be recorded and also we can hear you. Your name was Dan, and how do you spell
Dan,
Oops. That's okay. That's okay. Don't worry.
Dan Mijatovic, M-I-J-A-T of UIC. I'm the owner for the back lot.
What address is that?
3 Greystanes Road, Greystanes.
Okay.
So I don't know why it's not registered in your information.
I've got a sheet of paper with who I understood was registered, and it could have missed out you because you were a late registration.
Well, Elizabeth said she was going to give it the information.
You're here now, so
okay.
I'm quite happy to hear you. Please go ahead.
Just the proposal of petrol station, it's on their documents, it was missing 6 meter buffer zone. And the excavation was more than 3 meters down, which will disturb our boundary when we are building the unit next door, or units next door. That was allocation that was put in originally when the land was rezoned, and it was told before this developer bought it. So it was told to us that that's what's going to stay. And also we needed, in a negotiation with the original owner, we were discussing the connection from the Great Western Highway, the sewer line, to our lot. Because that was a buffer zone, we could easily bring it across. So if the developer is happy to adhere our needs, we're happy to lift our objection.
If someone were to show you a plan, can you just indicate to us where your property is in relation to the subject site?
My property is between the freeway and this particular land. Yeah, but it's entering from the Greystanes Road, not from the Great Western Highway.
I see. Right. Thank you for that. Yes, are there any questions?
Clarify, part of your land that goes to the point.
Yes.
Basically, if I'm understanding correctly, your sort of expectation and so on from the planning controls is that there'd be a setback basically from the minimum setback distance to every point on the boundary of your property.
Well, that is true, but we discussed it with the council before, and Bob Twee at the time told us we could actually build very close to the left-hand boundary, which is the freeway, which both properties are related to the frontage of the street, really, because freeway is a street. So, and other buildings are done like that. And we got like a 20-meter buffer zone between the freeway and our property. So, and it's all landscaped, and it's about 12-meter drop to the freeway. So there's no issue about noise or anything like that. We don't have an issue of privacy. We don't have an issue of overshadowing. It all goes to the freeway, so it's not a big deal.
So I'm meaning in relation to the
adjoining trucks.
Site,
yeah, at the moment they have a fence there, and they have a security electrical fence inside,
yeah.
and they park their trucks, but really should have been a buffer zone between that, but
Yeah, that's what I'm meaning. And you're feeling that that buffer zone within this redevelopment site, the Cabbages site,
yeah.
how wide?
Well,
you
they
expecting
said
that to
6
be?
meters originally, that's
Yeah.
what it's in the council's approvals originally, and we don't mind if you want to reduce the fraction, that's no problem to us, but that's what they were saying, it's going to be landscape. Petrol stations as such, they have issues of flammability and explosions, so I also sit on Fairfield City Council panel,
Right.
and we had petrol station which was a big issue on those issues, like flammability, explosion, and protection of the surrounding neighbours. So in that respect, we just need to address that through the DA process, I suppose, with the applicant, or the council has to do that. I'm sure the applicant had done the due diligence and prepare reports in that relationship. The other thing is petrol station is closer to the units,
Yeah.
and the McDonald's is actually further down. So the noise level is probably away. So I don't think it's going to be as problematic. I just don't know where his tanks are going to be positioned for different uses, you know.
And in
That's-
relation to the sewer line, if I understand correctly, basically you're wanting to be able to do a sewer line for redevelopment of your site.
Yeah.
Along the eastern boundary of the Cabbage, this development site, which
Yeah.
could occur, for example, within the landscaped area. Or
Exactly. So it wouldn't, because of that 6 meter buffer zone or whatever we decide on, it would allow then easily access to just to be done with the sewer. Even drilling, we don't have to even dig out because the sewer is in Great Western Highway. The connection for the 14 units next door are right on the corner. So we will put a branch and go straight into our development.
Okay, understand.
Through this buffer zone land. We have a sewer on top of the Greystanes Road, so we have a sewer there as well. But sewer, as you know, it can't go uphill unless you're just doing maybe a duplex or something like that. So, but there is another sewer line which is all the way to Tungabi Road, which is about 67 meters. So it was just like sort of not really feasible to go that way. But if we have to, we can do that too. Also, there is a stormwater easement, which is not easement, but a proposal by RMS, which they done originally on between the freeway and our land, because our land obviously was bigger. They cut it, and that's why it's this strange shape now. They cut it because they put the freeway in, and they needed that buffer zone. They returned portion of our land because they were planning for the access by freeway, but they decided not to go ahead, so they returned that portion. That's why our proposal, it's more feasible now than what it was before. If the council foresee it in the future, the change of zone for those two particular properties, for number 1 and number 3, to high-rise, it seems like a reasonable solution for the council to do so, because it's really a pocket that is, and I believe that probably a petrol station and McDonald's might even complement it if it's a high-rise. So you will have access, you have access to golf course, you've got access to RSL clubs, you have access to the shopping center. So its location for high-rise probably be a reasonable solution, which we are talking about at the moment. They're joining on us to put the proposal forward. Yeah. So, yeah.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand what's the basis of the 6 metre buffer zone you talk about?
The buffer zone
where does
is
that
the
arise?
council's regulations, which says that between industrial land and residential land should be a buffer zone, and that was given by the council to us at the time when we objected for the change of zoning to that particular area. That was in documents, yeah, your documents.
So documents you've received and your
From
understanding?
your office, yeah.
I'm just on the panel, I'm not
We're
council,
not
so.
on the council or anything to do with the council. We're a separate independent.
Oh,
panel.
sorry, I didn't understand that, okay. So you're a separate entity, okay, so the council, when the original owner, not this particular developer, original owner put application for change of zoning for his property, he went through the council, that was probably about maybe 2000 or something like that, no, not 2000, 2010, maybe something like that. That was supported by the council with the option that they give us a buffer zone of 6 meters. So the buffer zone will go like a little L shape to protect the residential properties in relation to the trucks, noise and whatever he wanted to do there. He had a pretty large operation at the time. Since then, he's changed it and put it all these Mercedes-Benz trucks, you know, across there and wires and all that.
Can we ask one of the council officers present to?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I believe what the respondent is referring to is part of a rezoning of the site. Sorry, Mr. Chair, just give me one second. So the common boundary that the respondent is referring to affects a very minor portion of the site. There is a vehicular access point in conjunction with the drive-through is proposed in that area, but that would not preclude the redevelopment of that adjoining site in terms of proximity to the boundary. And by and large, there is still a buffer provided to the residential development to the east of the site.
But just to be clear, I understand the merits of it. I'm just wondering, is there any statutory status to this 6 metre buffer? Is it? It's not in the DCP.
I believe it's a DCP.
Is it in the DCP?
Yeah. Yes. DCP provision. Yes. Standard.
Sorry, it has some status in a control document.
Yes, that's correct.
We'll have a look at that issue that you've raised later today when we adjourn and consider the application. Any further questions of this gentleman? Thank you very much indeed.
All right, thank you.
Now, gentleman in the plaid shirt, did you wish to speak? Did you wish to speak? Okay, I wasn't sure whether you had your hand up before or not. All right, so it's Mr. Benjamin Uni and Mr. Rod Lynette. And your name is?
My name's Benjamin Young. I'm the
Young,
managing...
I beg your pardon.
That's okay. Mr. Chair, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak with you. I might first start by responding to the neighbours' commentary there and provide some further clarity that was provided by the council officers. I think Mr. Director there provided a very succinct synopsis of the fact that there is only a very small portion of the neighbouring property that adjoins this, and it's a very narrow wedge of property that the setback controls have been assessed in the officer's report and deemed to be adequate. It's acknowledged there is a drive-through or a hard stand area in that setback control, but the building is of single-storey nature and does not sit in that setback area. The predominant portion of the neighbouring boundary is landscape on the eastern portion of the proposed development site. In addition, just to respond to a couple of other matters raised, the tank farms are proposed, and you can see them on the drawings. They're dashed in. They're on the western motorway side of the site. So all of the built form is between the neighbouring property. Sits between the neighbouring property and the tank farm. Also, and you would see that in the report, that a detailed SEP 33 hazard risk assessment in accordance with the relevant legislation has been undertaken and deemed to satisfy. There are also existing neighbouring residential properties that would have been that are in closer proximity to any tank farms and would have been assessed under that SEP 33. In addition to that, I think I'd like to thank the council officers for a very detailed and comprehensive assessment and report. I also appreciate the fact that it got to the September meeting. Timeliness was a matter for my client, and we appreciate the effort council have made to get it to here. I wanted to draw your attention to one condition, condition 29. It references a car wash. I think that's just a hangover from probably an older set of conditions. There is no car wash proposed on this development. I think it's just a condition that requires deletion. The other one that I'd like to bring your attention to is condition 13. There was an email from a colleague in my office back to the assessing officer. The condition calls for the lower panels on the pylon sign to be deleted. We've provided an updated drawing that shows that those panels will be used by the occupant 7-Eleven in part of their brand recognition of the products that are exclusive to 7-Eleven. That drawing has been provided, I believe, via email to the council officers in the last 24 to 48 hours. I do have a handout of that here if you'd like to see it, which just shows what's being proposed there.
Well, I'm sure we can have access to it.
Sure you can, yeah. Look, it's not a big deal. We just wanted to provide some further clarity on that as to what was intended for those bottom three panels, Mr. Chair. We also acknowledge that the report that was undertaken, the assessment by the assessing officer, provided a very comprehensive response to all the submissions received during the DA process, and we believe that they've all been adequately addressed. I'm here with my acoustic engineer too. They've made themselves available. We're here to answer any questions that you may have, and my client, the applicant, is also here.
I'm just having a look at this sign here now.
Yeah.
So you've got the product, got the business identification for McDonald's on the top.
Yes.
Then the 7-Eleven, then the mobile.
Yes.
Then the prices of the fuels.
Yes.
Then there's a blank one. So what happens?
That one's proposed for the kiosk. There is no operator yet, so that would be.
What sort of business do you anticipate would go into that kiosk?
I'll look at. It will be a smaller operator.
It wouldn't be another convenience store because you'd be right next door to the 7-Eleven. Exactly,
but that would be a commercial imperative. I think under the definition of kiosk, there's a floor space limitation. My client, I'm not aware that they have a tenant secured for that, but that panel in the agreements has been allocated for that kiosk, so the kiosk has appropriate signage.
I understand it. And then you've got 3 further panels which seem to be product identification.
Yeah, they're exclusive brands that 7-Eleven distribute, and it's a consistent process of which the 7-Eleven signage package includes. We just didn't include them in the signage package that was lodged with the DA. We just wanted to provide clarity to what the actual intent for those 3 panels were, so there was no unknown for the panel in consideration of the DA. It was just an oversight on our behalf in not providing that to the officer.
This has an overall maximum height of 15 metres, this sign?
Yeah, that's correct.
It's quite high, and it's well above the prescription of 8 metres.
Yes.
It's almost twice.
Yep.
And then it sort of got about 4 metres before you even start any of the signage.
Yeah,
Which is quite a big sign.
It is quite a big sign. I'm sure the operators would like a larger sign, but
I'm sure they would.
yes. Look, I mean, I accept your point, Mr. Chair. This has been assessed and been considered to be appropriate in terms of height. The RMS have also not raised an objection. It is an RMS motorway, and anything over 8 metres requires RMS to look at it under SEP 64. A SEP 64 assessment was done and a detailed assessment by the assessing officer was completed. My commentary regarding the condition 13 related only to the bottom 3 panels to provide clarity on what the intent for those were. Yes, sir.
Now, any further questions of Mr.
Just one question in relation to the boundary to the east and to number 3 around the back, basically the residential
The
boundary.
southeast portion of the site there, sir,
Essentially,
yes.
yep. The way I understand the drawings is basically we level, broadly speaking, the site and cut the retaining wall close to the residential property boundary. And there's some comments there about how being lower, improves the acoustics and so on to
Yes.
reduce impact on the neighbours. It seems an alternate option would be to move that retaining wall out to be level with the basically the hard paved part of the site and retain natural ground level for basically the landscaped area. And that seems as though that would further improve the acoustic relationship between the 2 properties. I was wondering, is there a particular reason for doing the extra excavation within the landscaped area to bring it down to the level of the site compared to the acoustic gain and landscape gain and perhaps ease of doing a sewer in future and so on by not excavating that minimum landscaped area adjoining the residential?
Yeah. Look, a really good question. So I'm going to pass over to my acoustic engineer to answer the technicalities on the acoustic. He's going to speak as well. In regards to the eastern boundary, though, there is about 10 car parks proposed to be checked in there as well. So obviously that requires to meet the levels of the hard stand area for the Australian standards for pedestrians to move across the site. I can't answer that question. Unfortunately, I'm not an engineer, but I know that it is proposed to have really strong landscaping through that area on the inside of the property boundary. And you can see in that southeast corner with the interface to the neighbour that there is a large proportion of landscaping there which addresses both the neighbouring residential zone properties.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Young, and there's no relationship between the two of us.
How are you, Mr. Young?
I'm interested in the kiosk. You've said that there's no tenant at the present time.
Not to my knowledge.
But during your design process, there's obviously some concepts in mind. Can you enlighten us as to the sort of concepts that you had in mind, or possibly for the kiosk, bearing in mind, as the Chairman asked, that we have a food outlet already, and we have a convenience store already in the 7-Eleven.
Yeah, look, again, I'd have to defer to my client who is here. I'm not sure where he's at in that. Obviously, the assessment's been underway for about 8 months. Speaking off the top of my head, a kiosk is typically a smaller space, so something that may be food related, but it is not offering a drive-through facility, and it normally trades shorter hours. So something like a noodle box, where someone might pull up to the site and pump fuel, or they may have children that want to go to McDonald's, but as the driver, I choose that I want to have a noodle box. So while my car's stationary, I walk in, I get my noodle box and I walk away. It obviously doesn't have provision for a drive-through, which the larger stores do, and they're the major generators on site. So it could be Tim and Bob's coffee shop, where they do barista coffee and cold brew, and they find that's an offering that's suitable for that location. It will be small in nature, given the legislative limitations by a kiosk. And I think, that type of offering also provides consumers to the site a difference. It's not going to be a hamburger joint, and it's not going to be a convenience store, because 7-Eleven won't like that. It would be something else in that type of retail consumer realm that complements the existing uses or the current proposed uses on site.
Thank you.
They're sort of sharing an existing driveway configuration where, you know, trucks can come in and get off the Great Western Highway, you know, choose to go into the truck sales site and the used car lot on the site to the west of this subject site. I was just wondering what you understand this development will mean with the change of that sort of forecourt area outside of the gated part of the existing site, what the change will mean for the development next door.
Yeah, I was going to say they do have an existing. They do have an existing crossover there or access gate. It's just at the moment more convenient to utilise the one that's essentially a shared, but there is no easement on title, and the neighbours are aware of the development obviously through the notification process, and my client's obviously spoken to them through the acquisition.
So essentially they'd be using their existing gate to the highway and they close.
They defer to their exclusive access, I suppose, rather than using the shared access.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Mr. Rod Leonard.
Thank you very much.
And I think your name is Mr. Rod Leonard.
That's correct. So,
So what's your position in relation to the application?
we did the acoustic assessment for the project.
Okay.
So just, there was a specific question which we can get to, but I'll just give it a little bit of background.
Yeah.
So the development's been assessed in accordance to the appropriate guidance and policy, which is the noise policy for industry and road noise.
Yeah, could you just either move the microphone or get your mouth a bit closer?
Is that better?
So we can...
Sorry.
Thank you.
So it's been assessed in accordance with the appropriate policy and guidances required for such a development. The noise predictions, which we did through detailed modelling, meet the criteria that's required under that policy and those guidance documents. And also the council have had no specific objections or comments regarding noise or acoustics on the site. It's only through the submissions it's become raised. And the council has also just conditioned the development as per the recommendations that have been provided in that noise report around that acoustic wall on the drive-through specifically as mitigation. And sorry, one other, which was, sorry, the two main recommendations was the wall and the mechanical plants located on the southern side of the kiosk, so it's shielded from receivers. If you want to, sorry, I was going back to the specific question about the wall, and what was the concern exactly around that?
Essentially, if I look at the cross section through the site, looking from the highway this way, essentially you've got the flat site and the wall to the residential, and you know, there's a small bit of landscaping, but essentially most of the landscape setback where there's landscaping is at the level of the site. And it seems there would be an opportunity to, rather than have the wall closer to the residential boundary and the landscaping at the level of the site, to bring that wall closer to the edge of the paving and car parking and so on at the site, and have the landscaping at the natural ground level rather than at the excavated ground level within that essentially eastern setback. And so the effect would be that the site is sort of recessed and there's a little bit more protection for the residential development by bringing that vertical edge to the edge of the source where the vehicles and so on are, the car parking area. And it also would mean that there's less excavation and the landscaping can be at the natural ground level, which is more perhaps compatible. It also means that for the residential development next door that you've got that sort of natural 45-degree, line through the existing ground level largely, rather than cutting in and doing a retaining wall. In effect, the retaining wall's sort of protecting the elevated landscaping area rather than being, you know, having a structural role to protect the residential development next door or the backyards next door.
So your question is, what's the difference?
Well,
between what's proposed.
One, from a design perspective, is there a barrier to doing that from the sense of operation on the site? And secondly, it is mentioned in the reports that, well, look, there's an acoustic advantage from having the site excavated. Certainly understand, agree with that. I'm just saying, well, perhaps there might be an additional advantage, perhaps not necessary in terms of meeting standards, by, you know, bringing that retaining wall further within the site to be at the edge of the landscaped area. Well,
the barrier is as close to the source as it can be. So it's adjacent to the drive-through lane, and it has a height of 4.7 metres relative to the ground level of where the vehicles are going through.
Sorry, I'm not thinking of the barrier, I'm meaning the edge of the excavation.
It wouldn't change where the barrier would go. So if you were, if you were to like backfill against that barrier, you're still going to have that same barrier height.
Yeah.
So whether it was landscaped or not, you would still need a barrier of similar height.
I'm thinking of
acoustically.
You know, for example, where the barrier isn't.
There's still some small amount of cut, I think, along that way, but there's also, you've got a fence on the boundary as well, which also offers some form of barrier. And also, that's not where your major noise sources are. It's really just parked cars. So the barrier is put in place because that's where most of the noise was expected to occur from those vehicles driving through. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's no further speakers in relation to this matter? If that's the case, at the conclusion of the public meeting, we will determine this application and notify the decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. The next application is on the agenda is 28 Patricia Street, Mays Hill, a modification application. No one has registered to speak, but if anybody in the public gallery wishes to seek to speak, they may do so. If not, that matter will be considered later, and our decision will be notified on the council website as soon as may be possible. The next item on the agenda is 102 to 108 Great Western Highway and Joyner Street, Westmead. There are two speakers registered, Mr. Brad Delapierre and Mr. Mark Bowman. Does anybody in the public gallery wish to seek to speak who's not registered? In that case, if Mr. Delapierre could come forward. And as before, your name is Brad Delapierre, you're a town planner on behalf of the applicant.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
So good afternoon, Mr. Chair and panel members. As you're aware from Council's report, this application seeks to modify an approved 6-storey shop top housing development. It seeks to modify the development by providing 5 additional units within the complex and also providing 12 additional car parking spaces. The 5 additional units are predominantly as a result of both the removal of the 2 4-bedroom units from the development and the increase in both the 3 and 2 bedroom units as well as 1 within the complex, as well as refinement of the design and also a slight extension of the building envelope. The refinement has come about primarily because of the engagement of a new architect for the project, who's obviously reviewed the plans, and as a result of that review has managed to, I guess, improve the development's compliance with the apartment design guide by increasing the number of units that are naturally cross-ventilated, also reducing the number of units that receive no solar access in midwinter, and also increasing the area of common open space on the site. We believe that the development as recommended is an appropriate refinement of the site, and together with the architect who's also here, we'd be happy to answer any questions the panel may have on the item.
One thing, this is a court-approved development.
Correct.
One thing is there's quite a large number of changes from the approved development. And I assume that you or the applicant went through a process to determine whether or not it was in fact substantially the same development.
Yep.
That issue?
Yeah, look, we're certainly very comfortable that having regards to court judgments around modifications, that it is in essence the same application being a shop top housing development that comprises a combination of retail and residential floor space. As I said, the essence of the application is the same in our minds, and also I guess also in the eyes of Council's assessing officer. Certainly when you have regards to the height of the development is not changed by this proposal. It's certainly the same as was approved. The building footprint is in essence the same, and in my mind not inconsistent with the approved footprint. Case law has certainly held the view that you can increase the intensity of development via a modification, and we certainly believe that this is not inconsistent with the approved plans and in essence the same development. So that's, I guess, the exercise we've gone through. The application before you today is in essence still for a shop top housing development. It's on the site, and it's in our mind substantially the same development, given that, as I said, the envelope is relatively consistent with what's approved. And the building height has not increased at all as a result of the development. As I said, the refinement's predominantly by revisiting the floor plate, but yes, we do acknowledge there are some extensions to the building footprint at the lower levels.
Mr. Delapierre, we're looking at this application as shop top housing. But having a look at a number of the court cases that I've seen at the present time, it doesn't appear to be shop top housing because of the building at the rear is not actually above any shops.
Correct. You're right, from a pure planning point of view, it would be appropriately defined as a mixed-use development that contains both retail premises and residential apartments. And the zoning of the site is unusual in that it does allow residential flat buildings in the B6 zoning. So you're right, though it presents, when you look at the elevations of shop top housing development, it would be more appropriately or legally defined as a mixed use development that contains two elements, being some commercial floor space and a residential apartment building that's permissible in the B6 zone. Thank you.
So is Mr. Bowman present? Mr. Bowman, you're the architect, aren't you? Just come forward. I'll check whether there are any. Did you wish to say anything first?
No, it was just to answer any questions if there was any. Yeah.
Thank you for attending, though. As with the other items of the agenda, at the close of the public meeting, we will consider this application and notify our decision. That brings us to the next and last item on the 271 to 273 Excelsior Street, Guildford. The number of people registered to speak. Is there Miss Colleen Crawford present? Yes, and you're speaking against the application. Could you come forward first, please? Your name is Colleen Crawford.
Yes,
And
and
could you give us your address, please?
35 Caroline Street, Guildford.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Both Parramatta Council in 213 and Environmental Court rejected this DA in 2014, and it has now reappeared again in Cumberland Council. Being a diverse and multicultural area, we as a whole community have come together to fight this DA again, and we all are united in our concerns for our neighbourhood. This application is totally out of context with the surrounding area of a single or one-storey dwellings. Asbestos, a major concern due to the age of the buildings to be demolished. We need to have all precautions taken. Safety. The laneway has always been an area of problems for a long time. Gravel police have often been to investigate incidents like bad behaviour, drugs, general nuisance, fights, and people with intent to steal jumping the fences. The fire brigade had to attend another fire in the lane last week, and they are sending a report to Cumberland Council in regards to the incident. A neighbour recently had the misfortune to see an adult urinating in the laneway. Traffic. Excelsior Street is a straight stretch between Rawson Road and Guildford Road, and every day there are cars speeding from one end to the other, if not speeding, doing crazy stunts. Parking. A majority of the surrounding homes have granny flats, and parking at a premium in Excelsior Street. Cars park in front of driveways, in bus stops and on the verge, and footpaths, totally disregarding any of the rules. Buses will not stop to pick up passengers. People are blocked in their driveways, and the posties are fed up with having to negotiate the parked cars to access their boxes. Due to the close proximity of two cul-de-sacs, Nadia Place and Caroline Street, and being accessible by the laneway, the residency units will, if no parking is available in the park or Excelsior, will proceed to park their cars in our cul-de-sacs. We now have an average of 2.1 cars per home in the street, and we don't need any more. If this application goes through, will these two streets be used by the contractors to do deliveries of material if no parking available? We have small children playing here, so this could be a major safety concern. Flood zone. Being in a flood zone area, how is the natural flow of storm water going to be affected? When we have heavy rain, the laneways run like rivers. This large building is going to have quite an effect on the natural flow. Can the contractors assure us that suitable planning has been appropriate for the event of flooding? Planning. Why four commercial tendencies? Two front and two rear. Perhaps there are later plans to have a cafe coffee shop in one. An al fresco communal area has been noted in the plans next to one of the commercial areas with access only from the rear lane for non-residents, resulting in an increase in pedestrian traffic and noise, possibly for all hours of day and night. The overall effect of this building will be horrendous. It does not blend in with the surrounding homes. It invades the privacy of homes next to it, both sides and back, not to mention the mention of loss of sunshine into backyard. It is too large. A building out of this size is totally out of context to the surrounding homes. I would say okay if it was near a railway station, major bus route, which we are not, or a major supermarket chain. No consideration whatsoever has been taken to any of the homeowners in close proximity to this application. In fact, only those close to it, but the whole area. This is a great area to live in, and we have to deal with this ridiculous application is beyond words. Our final words are no to this development, and we the residents implore this panel to reject the application so we can keep the ambience of the area as it is now and hopefully into future years. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And is it Ms. Florrie Beamster? For the record, your name is Florrie Beamster.
That's correct.
And can you give us your address, please?
I live at 45 Caroline Street, which is directly behind the proposed development.
Thank you.
Just over the laneway.
Yes.
I'm here along with some of my neighbours to express our concerns with the proposed development. I don't feel like I need to add to the engineering, architectural or environmental arguments about this proposal because they've been meticulously covered by the council officers. Thank you very much. I'm here to speak to you about the human side of it. The proposed development is massive compared with other properties in the neighborhood. It is important that new developments relate to the established setting of the neighboring properties and the wider locality. It will adversely impact on the value, use, and enjoyment of our properties. Human rights are universal and egalitarian. The rights to solar access, privacy, and to live in peace is not exclusive to developers. It is critical that we have a common moral language and live by the same ethical behavior barometer. A building of that size will surely cast a big shadow on my house, my neighbors, particularly during the afternoon. We all currently enjoy the sunny aspect in our garden, and I know that most of my neighbors do as well. A building this size will surely take that away. The proposed plan shows balconies and windows, which will mean that a large number of people will have a view directly over my garden and into my house, and the same will apply to other neighboring properties. Psychologically, people need private space. This applies in public as well, behind closed doors and drawn curtains. Sociologically, people need to be free to behave without the continual threat of being observed. A person has the right not to have his or her privacy, family, and home unlawfully or randomly interfered with. The communal area, balconies and traffic generated within and around the proposed building will result in increased noise coming to all neighboring properties. The proposed number of parking spots are not sufficient to service the number of units, the visitors, and shops' demands. The fallout from this will cause havoc in the immediate area. And I'm also worried that the underground parking will serve as a haven for truants and other future underbelly characters. We all have a moral responsibility to ensure that we live in a safe and respectful environment. A building this size is not in line with the character of the area. It creates privacy issues that is unacceptable to neighboring properties. We all have the right to live without angst and apprehension. Approval of this application is not in the interest of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Ms. Beamstone? Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Gasson Kabar, come forward, please, sir. Your name is Gasson Kabar, and you're the owner of the subject site.
Yes.
Now, we have some documentation from you which we had prior to the meeting, which we have all read.
Okay.
But I understand you wish to make a presentation now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chairman, and thanks everyone for letting me know, speak about my case. As you know, shop top housing, the DA we propose, is surrounded by 2-lane and street. And also it's proposed to have 10 units flat at the top of commercial, which is consisted of 2 shops and 2 retail offices. So that's the point of the shop top housing. I'm going to talk here about 3 main issues. Issues that's raised by the previous town planner, issues raised by the new town planner, which update they changed, and issues of the objectives. First of all, the issue of the previous town planner, they assessed our DA and submitted 2 assessment reports, and we already addressed all the issue related to this report, and we submitted amendment. And when I talked to that town planner, she told me no new issues will be raised after this 2 report. And also she said, I'd ask her about what about the issue related to neighbors and complaint. She said, if you answer the issue raised by the council, that will automatically address the issues of the complainer or the objector. And no issue has been raised related to separation, to bulk and mass, to streetscape. In fact, the comment in the page 652, 653 already said, we comply with this. That's the comment from the council, which against the objector, because the objector probably have wrong perspective of our DA. So we comply 100%, even the mass, we did not utilize the whole of what's been allowed in B1 zone. Now coming to the second issue with the new town planner. After they changed the town planner, now new town planner come and ask her to meet with her to discuss any issues. She said she worked part-time, she cannot give me a time to meet with her. I said, okay, there are some important issues we need to resolve, and we need to get guidance on how to resolve them before we submit the final amendment. And she said, okay, address the issues in the last letter come in the assessment report, and that's all. And that's what we've done. We addressed all of them. Suddenly, we received a new report from her in 25th of July, raising too many issues. The majority of these issues are minor and easy to fix. And she said in her letter, we don't have the chance to discuss this issue at all or to submit any clarification. And at the same time, she mentioned, it's better for me to withdraw from the application. After I paid all this money, she advised me to withdraw from the application, which wasn't just. And also, raising too many issues and hiding to last moment and without giving us the chance to address them, that's also is not justice. There are some important issues in addition to the minor issues. These important issues related to separation. First of all, the separation in level 1, we comply 100% because we don't have a case of habitable to habitable room. We don't have window facing balcony or facing window of neighbors. We only have wall facing windows or window facing backyard. So this is a non-habitable case. And in non-habitable case, the separation will be 3 meter plus additional 3 meter because of change of zone. That's become 6 meter. And we have 6.66 meter, which is comply with the regulation. We have habitable to habitable in level 2, and we have separation 9.6 meter. We also comply with the regulation. That's one of the important issue. The other important issue which you raised relate to waste management. Waste management, we already submitted a report, a plan, and we said how it will be handled by a private company, and we'll never put the rubbish bin on the street. And she's still mentioning that we are putting the rubbish bin on the street, which we never do that. The plan, I already submit a copy of the waste management plan to you, and it's indicating that the private company will handle the waste collection. The other issue related to unit size, she said we are not complying in some of them. 1 and 3 we comply because it's 70 square meter already. The unit 7 and 8, we have 94 square meter, and she said we need additional 5 square meter because we have additional bathroom. But when we look at the guide ADG, the figure it's already showing for 3-bedroom, bathroom inside the master bedroom and bathroom outside, which consider 2 bathroom as part of the 90 square meter. And we already follow this guide. So we comply according to that figure. The other issues related to parking, headroom and crest, we already, on the ramp, we already have an answer to it, and we already submit a very clarification on how we address that issues. The other important issue related to landscape and deep soil, we already comply based on the ADG, which said we need to have 10% for the deep soil and landscape, and we have 15.66%. In addition, the LEP 2011, in terms of dimension of the landscape, we also comply with that. So we comply with 2 regulations, LEP 2011 and ADG. So that's in relation to the issues that's being raised by the new town planner. The rest of the issues are very minor and it's easy to fix. Issue of objectors. I heard about the objectives for many complaints, which is fine, but at the end, we comply with regulation. And the council themselves already stressed that point, and they already answered their points related to safety, to crime, to security, related to density and parking, and we comply. Parking, we have 26 car park. It will never cause any issue with the car parking. The bulk and size, we already utilize 70% what is allowed for B1 zone. In terms of other issues, we already comply 100%. Height, we have less than 12 meter height. And it's very close to 2-story building, the similar height in 2-story building, just two house from our DA. We submitted a DA to improve the area, not to have a side impact on the area. Probably they have the neighbors have wrong perception, but we have a noise report showing that it will not affect the neighbors. We have visual privacy. We respect the separation and setback, so it will not affect them at all. And we have in terms of the bulk, we already utilize 70% of what is allowed in B1 zone, not the whole 100%. And in terms of the setback and the character of the street, we already have 2 setback in level 1 and level 2 to make it very close, smooth transition, similar to the character of the street. And we have a B1 zone. It cannot be treated the same as R2 zone, and there is no much difference. I mean, B1 zone allows us to have 12 meter, and we have less than 12 meter. The R2 zone have close to 12 meter. So there is no much difference in terms of height. And in terms of bulk, we try to have a transition. We have a setback.
Mr. Kabar,
Yes.
because you needed to cover quite a lot of issues, I've let you have twice as much time as the normal time, but I would ask you to finish up now. Thank you.
I finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions of Mr. Kabar? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I should also say that we do have a hard copy of your submission here, so we can look at that later. Thank you. We will consider this item when we adjourn the public meeting, which will be shortly, and we'll notify the decision on the council website as soon as may be possible. When we go into private adjudication, we will return to the hearing room to announce our decisions, but I can't tell you when that will be. We've got 5 items on the agenda. It could be a couple of hours, so I wouldn't suggest that you wait around. Yes, did you wish to say something? What is your name, please? Daniels. Well, I don't understand why we don't seem to have that. I'm not disbelieving you. Would you like to speak briefly then? Your name is Martin Daniels. Martin Daniels. Carolyn Street. So is this in relation to Excelsior Street, Guildford, or? Yes, sir. Okay, right. Please go ahead. Yes. Yes.
And even as to why, have they looked at the easement, which I've made allegations of being there before? It was some 30 years ago, 30 years plus, that there was a transfer of a partial 271 onto 273's land. Now, there might not be any record these days of an easement, but back in those days it was. That was provided to 273 to be able to use that area as a driveway, to be able to park out the back when they put their units up at the back of their shop. The previous owner of 273 has also confirmed of the easement and the transfer of the land. Right, we've also, in May last year, council sent out to a resident a letter saying there is a period for objection again or comments. That correspondence had the incorrect plans of the building. Council were notified along with the register of objections, and there's been no further correspondence until this meeting's been called. No acknowledgement or admission of guilt of council sending the wrong paperwork to people. in providing the draft agenda for today. The objections previously, everyone's name and address has been deleted from the correspondence included in today's documents. However, my address still appears there. My name's been deleted, but the address is still there. There goes the confidentiality. If the development is to proceed, how much interference is there going to be to local residents, especially in Caroline Street? What about the people who use the laneway to access the school, the bus stop? Building sites don't just go to the boundary, they take up more than their boundary with their fences and so forth. How much inconvenience is going to be placed on the residents who use that area? It's a public thoroughfare. And the bus stop out the front of the development application, where are all the tradesmen going to be parking? Rest assured, we can see now, if this goes ahead, they'll be parking in Caroline Street and Nadia Place immediately behind it. Again, causing further inconvenience to the residents.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Whilst you're there, can I ask the council about this issue that Mr. Daniels raised about a possible easement at the back of the property? Throw any light on that?
We did investigate that, Mr. Chair, and there's no record of, we've not, our development engineers have looked into that and have found no record of a current easement.
Did you find a transfer of part of land from one block to the other?
Through you, Mr. Chair, your submission, which dealt with that issue, was investigated based on that, and that includes a title search land, and that has not revealed any easement detail, which is where that information would be kept.
Well, that's where the easement would have been recorded.
Sure.
In those days, and it's 30 years plus. Yeah. I've lived in the area for 45 years. I know it well. I know the residents, and I'm part of the residential friendship group we have.
Certainly.
Any questions of Mr. Daniels? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Kabar, I'm sorry that I didn't realise that Mr. Daniels was registered to speak, so I have to give you the opportunity if you want to respond to anything he said. Only if you want to respond.
Okay.
This is not an opportunity to make another speech.
Just in relation to the easement, as council said, there's no easement. In
well,
relation to the
evidence.
Yeah, in relation to the transfer of the property, I own both properties. There is no issues in that.
How long have you been the owner?
Since 1999.
1999.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, as I said before, at the conclusion of the public meeting, which will be in a moment, we'll consider this application. Close the public meeting. Thank you very much. You'll have to show me each of the decisions. So I've reopened the public meeting of the Cumberland Local Planning Panel and report on the decisions taken by the panel in relation to today's agenda. The first item was 5 to 9 Hall Street, Auburn. And this application was approved, subject to draft attachment to the report. For proceeding to decision, the panel considered the clause 4.6 satisfied that the applicant's written request matters required to be demonstrated by clause 4. Approved of the application report. The second item on the was 601 Great Western Highway, Greystanes. That development application was approved subject to the deletion of condition 29 and the insertion of a new condition 13A, enhancing the landscaping along the 2-metre landscape strip along the eastern boundary. That item. The third item on the agenda was a modification application relating to 28 Maze Hill. This application was approved by the panel subject to an amendment reducing the size, or the length rather, of a privacy screen to unit. The fourth item on the agenda was also a modification application relating to premises at 102 to 108 Great Western Highway and 4 Joiner Street, Westmead. This modification application was approved by the panel. In doing so, the panel noted that it was constrained by the consent granted by the Land and Environment Court, but agreed generally with the Planning Officer's report recommending be approved. The last item on the agenda was a development application in relation to 271 to 273 Excelsior Street, Guildford. This application was refused by the panel for the reasons set out in the attachment to the Planning Officer's report as amended by. Close the public meeting at 41.